Genius Kids. Cultivating love for learning.
Chapter 5. Biodiversity Conservation. Knowledge Acquisition. Biodiversity comprises of different varieties of life forms on Earth. Our biodiversity is threatened nowadays. Steps must be taken to conserve it, otherwise valuable species resources would not only be endangered but will become extinct one day, just like dinosaurs. Discussion. Jack. Biodiversity means bio is equal to life, diversity is equal to variety. Susie. Good, Jack. Jack. Susie, that is fine, but how and why different varieties of plants and animals are threatened? Susie. Even, I don't know, but it is shocking. Come, let's find out why are they threatened and what can we do for them. Biodiversity. Definition. Biodiversity means the variety of life forms on the earth. Biodiversity is rich near the equator and declines as we move towards higher altitude due to unfavorable living conditions there. Animal species are called fauna. Plant species are called flora. 1. Biodiversity is threatened. Our biodiversity is threatened because of the following different factors. 1. Population growth. Increasing human population requires land space and more food to fulfill their nutritional requirements. As a result of this, more and more forest lands are cleared so as to vacate the space for crop fields and buildings. 2. Deforestation. Trees are essential to hold on soil, maintenance of balance of atmospheric gases, regulation of temperature, etc. Cutting down of these trees to fulfill greedy human demands is affecting biodiversity. 3. Habitat loss. Every species has its own distinct niche and a habitat. Deforestation is disrupting the natural habitat of flora and fauna. 4. Pollution. Vehicular pollution and industrial pollution have affected the atmosphere, thus leading to depletion of oxygen, which, in turn, affects the living conditions of a variety of life forms. 5. Non-native species. Non-native or foreign species in an area generate competition for resources available, as a result of which native species become endangered. 2. Conservation of biotic diversity or biodiversity. International Convention on Biodiversity is an agreement that is made by the governments of different countries for the conservation of biodiversity. Different practices for conservation of biodiversity that have been suggested include: A. Preparation of list of endangered and threatened species to protect them from extinction. B. Birth rate should be controlled so as to allow sustainable development. C. Environmental pollution must be controlled to prevent global warming and ozone depletion. D. Different ways or guidelines must be suggested by every country to preserve or conserve biodiversity. E. Protection from forest fires must be ensured by spraying fire extinguishing solutions from aircrafts or by changing the direction of wind. F. Protection from insects and pests by using insecticides and fungicides and removing infected trees. Methods of conservation. Conservation of threatened and endangered species is very essential. International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources and Indian government have already taken many steps to conserve biodiversity. Methods of conservation are broadly classified into two categories. A. In situ conservation. B. Ex situ conservation. A. In situ conservation. Conservation of species within their own habitat is a practice of in situ conservation. In situ conservation is done with less human interference. A network of protected areas classified for in situ conservation are as follows. 1. National Parks. National Park is also called as Nature Reserve. It is the area reserved for the betterment of wildlife. Critical thinking. A snail can hibernate for 3 to 4 years. During this period it does not feed. They are usually maintained by national or state governments. Visitors are allowed to enter national parks but only for study and recreational purposes. Grazing, hunting or cultivation is not allowed here. There are a total of 75 national parks in India. 2. Wildlife Sanctuary. It is meant for protection of fauna only. Activities like hunting or grazing is not allowed. Wildlife sanctuaries are not owned privately. There are a total of 42 sanctuaries in India. 3. Biosphere Reserve. Biosphere reserves are the areas meant for conservation of biodiversity with its sustainable use. Biosphere Reserve has 3 zones. Transition or Manipulation Zone, Buffer Zone, Core Area. Core area is fully protected and no human activities are allowed in this area. However, buffer and transition zones are accessible to human activities. Core Zone. No human activity is allowed in this zone. Comprises of legally protected ecosystem. Buffer Zone. Limited human activity is permitted in buffer zone. Manipulation zone or transition zone. Several human activities can be carried on in the manipulation zone, for example, settlement, cropping, forestry, recreation, etc. B. Ex situ conservation. Conservation of species away from their natural habitat is called ex situ conservation. Ex situ conservation involves conservation of species in herbarium, zoological parks, museums, botanical gardens, etc. 1. Zoo. Zoo is maintained for education, recreation and conservation purpose. Different live animal breeds are kept and conserved. Threatened species are allowed to reproduce and give birth to young ones. Proper care is given to the organisms. Moreover, Central Zoo Authority of India provides funding and assistance to different zoological parks. 2. Botanical Garden. It is an area where living plants are grown in greenhouses and conservatories. These are utilized for education and conservation purposes. Red Data Book. Red Data Book is maintained by International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, IUCN. IUCN is a group of organizations and scientific experts that works for the conservation of biodiversity. Red Data Book is the state document that maintains the record of rare and endangered species of plants and animals within the territory of the state or country. Different categories that are used to describe threatened species include the following. A. Extinct, EX. A group is considered to be extinct when there is surety that even the last individual of the group has died. B. Extinct in the wild, EW. These are those that are known to survive only in captivity or cultivation or as a naturalized population outside its historic range. C. Critically endangered, CR. These are those that are facing an extreme high risk of extinction in the world. Critical thinking. Giraffes can live longer without water than camels. D. Endangered, EN. These are those that are facing a high risk of extinction in the world. E. Vulnerable, VU. These are those that are facing a high risk of endangerment in the world. F. Near threatened, NT. These are those that are likely to become endangered in the near future. G. Least concern, LC. This category includes those that are at lowest risk. They are abundant and widespread. H. Data deficient, DD. This category includes those whose data is not enough to make an assessment of the risk of extinction. Not evaluated, NE. These are those which have not been evaluated yet. Threatened term usually includes three categories: critically endangered, endangered, and vulnerable. Endemic species. Endemic species are those species of plants and animals which are exclusively found in a particular area and are not naturally found anywhere else. Migration. Definition. The periodic or seasonal movement of animals from one place to another in response to change in climate or for food or to ensure reproduction is called migration. Critical thinking. The species found only in restricted areas are called endemic species. The phenomenon of occurrence of endemic species is called endemism. Types of migration. A. Removal migration. Permanent migration occurs due to either unfavorable climatic conditions or due to shortage of food, water, and shelter. B. Eruption. Migratory cycle in extreme climate. For example, in the case of flamings of Arctic tundra. C. Remigration. Migration of generation for reproduction. First generation moves to an area, reproduce there, the next generation offsprings then return to native area. D. Seasonal migration. Most common type of migration seen. Birds show migration on change of season as in spring or autumn. Animals leave their home for one season and then return back in the next season. Example: Siberian crane and sea lion show seasonal migration. Continuous review. Biodiversity comprises of different life forms on Earth. Plant species is called as flora. Animal species is called as fauna. Biodiversity is threatened due to several different reasons such as population growth, deforestation, habitat loss, pollution, and non-native species. Biodiversity can be conserved by in situ and ex situ methods of conservation. Red Data book lists different categories of threatened species. This book is maintained by IUCN, International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. Species found in restricted areas is called endemic species and the phenomenon of their occurrence is called endemism. The periodic or seasonal movement of animals from one place to another in response to change in climate or for food or to ensure reproduction is called migration.
Like, share and subscribe.